Welcome back to The Heat. We're discussing diplomatic efforts to end the fighting in eastern Ukraine between Ukrainian forces and pro-Russian fighters. Joining us now from Rhode Island is Vladimir Golstein. He is an associate professor of Slavic Studies at Brown University. And here with us in our Washington, D.C. studio is Anton Fedyashin. He is a professor of history at American University and a specialist in Russian and European history. Gentlemen, thanks to both of you for joining us. Vladimir, let me start with you. Listening there to Ambassador Valerie Charlie, it seems that the two sides are so far apart in how they view this conflict in eastern Ukraine. You know, we've seen two agreements in 2 years, still no peace. Is there any reason to believe that this new round of talks that we're going to see is going to bring peace to the region?
Well, there is always hope, but I didn't hear in the words of Ambassador anything really, positive, anything which can give one sort of, confidence that the Ukrainian side wants to look at things realistically, and rather than coming up with the slogans which are 2 years old, and rather than remaining very incalcitrant. Let's consider for a second what's going on in eastern Ukraine. It's continued to be bombed and shelled by Kyiv forces which want to subjugate it. That's their purpose. They already killed about 10,000 people there. And eastern Ukraine now, when the whole thing started maybe 2 years ago, maybe they were willing to negotiate, maybe they would have been interested. But if you can imagine any group of population, if 10,000 people are killed, if more than 1 million are forced to exile, they're now not willing to surrender. And they do appeal to Russians, to help them. But I would also say what is important for your readers to know is that Kyiv appointed a military civilian leader. His name is Pavel Zhebrinsky, who observed situation in eastern Ukraine and basically said nobody now wants to go back. If we ever get rid of, Soviet influence, Russian influence, we will still have to have military presence in every major city. In other words, he himself aware that eastern Ukraine doesn't want to be part of Ukraine under these conditions of bombing and shelling. And Ambassador, for some reason, refuses to acknowledge it, that this is the people in eastern Ukraine. They already had their referendums, and they already said that we cannot be part of this country, of this entity, which keeps on shelling us and bombing us. So, of course, Ambassador or Kyiv regime can insist that, we'll do something until we cannot do anything until the Russians move. But the problem is that people on the ground don't want it. And on this note, I would also add that it is in the interest of Kyiv to continue this military escalation, because the only thing that the regime seems to be running nowadays is on Russophobia. Their economy is falling apart. They have difficulties getting money. The only way for them to get some help is by claiming that, one more time they're victims of Russian aggression, hoping that EU or United States will come to the rescue.
Okay.
That's the policy.
Anton, we heard the ambassador say several times that Ukraine will not accept a Crimea that is under the control of Russia. We see the two sides unwilling to back down. They're ramping their respective forces on both sides of the border. What do you think needs to happen for there to be some kind of lasting peace?
Well, whatever happens to bring about peace, I'm afraid at this point the Crimea will no longer be really a bargaining chip. It seems to be in Russia's control. The fact that it is absent from the Minsk agreement says that even if the Minsk agreement points are fulfilled, that's when the West will consider the acute part of this crisis over. So de facto, just judging by the text of the Minsk agreement, the Crimea is off the table for the time being. I presume that the sanctions on the Crimea will remain, but it looks like the West has made peace with it. I think that the sanctions have actually worked in favor of the people of the Crimea feeling their loyalties switch towards Russia, which the referendum reflected, because they feel like they have been punished for a democratic choice that they made during the referendum, which we know has not been recognized in the West. But for the people of the Crimea, this was their choice, and it's hard to argue against it. So again, I agree with Vladimir. There are two narratives here. Neither side seems to be backing down. So incrementally implementing the Minsk agreement is the only way to go.
Right. Vladimir, in terms of the talks that are coming up now to reach another kind of permanent ceasefire, there's a Russian newspaper called Vedomosti, which says that escalation is part of the Kremlin's tactic before negotiations. Do you believe that to be the situation?
Well, I think, there's always in every conflict we have to look at who's benefits. And clearly neither Eastern Ukraine nor Russia benefits from this escalation. But what is clear to me who benefits is, I suspect, Ukrainian side, because as I said, they like to play victim. I also think it's, who benefits is their American sponsors. Don't forget that we're on the verge of elections, and Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton, more or less also similar to Ukrainian regime, she runs on Russophobia. She needs to sort of provoke Russia so then she can point out, say, oh, Russia is bad, and my opponent Trump is a good friend, and look what Russia is doing in Ukraine. So I think these endless shellings here, there, provocation in Crimea, provocation now in in Donbass. It's but the pattern is absolutely clear. So of course, Ukrainian side can claim as much as they want about Russian interference, but common sense says Russians stand nothing to gain from that, as opposed to this to other side. It also serves as a fantastic kind of way of distraction. Because recently we just read they raised, price for utilities in Kyiv 30% and many other places. Right. Income is not increasing, so local population is not happy. So what can be better than a little, external enemy, as a little piece of Russophobia? And that's what they're doing.
Yeah. Anton, Europe, the European Union, is heavily invested in the peace process right now. We've got France involved, we've got Germany involved, but they're ruling out any kind of peacekeeping mission. There's going to be no EU peacekeeping mission to monitor any kind of ceasefire. They say, yes, there'll be police monitors, but no peacekeeping mission. So how will that be policed? And, you have the Ukrainians still talking about becoming full members of NATO.
Right. NATO's not talking about the Ukrainians becoming full members, and that's the most important aspect of this. Moreover, with the Crimea becoming part of Russia and the Ukrainians having a territorial dispute, the chances that they're becoming a full member of NATO are even more diminished than they were before. That's number one. As for Russia's position on Ukraine and moving forward, the Europeans seem to be running their Ukrainian policy on the cheap, attempting to run it on the cheap. They have made a lot of promises to Ukraine: a visa-free regime, enormous economic benefits in exchange for the signing of the association agreement. But so far, none of that has actually taken place. And the Europeans really are going out of their way to prevent a full-scale quagmire. In other words, getting their troops and boots on the ground involved. So short of the OSCE observation mission, we haven't seen any commitment on the European part. Part of it is that they didn't expect the Russians to pull off what they did with the Crimea and with the support of the southeastern Ukrainian rebels. On the other hand, there seems to be Europe's facing so many problems of its own that Crimea is and Ukraine are really on the back burner. Brexit is a much bigger issue for Europe, as is the refugee crisis.
Well, tell me very quickly, is Russia prepared to accept limited autonomy for the Donbass region? Or is the bottom line that it has to be incorporated into Russia? Well,
listen, the Russians have been absolutely clear that they do not want to incorporate parts of southeast Ukraine. And the best proof of that is then when the declaration of independence took place of those two breakaway republics, Vladimir Putin, the Kremlin, refused to recognize them. So there's no question in my mind that there's no intent on the part of the Russians to incorporate these places. They are more than happy with autonomy within Ukraine. And that seems to be like the most constructive thing that Kiev can start moving towards right now.
Vladimir, what do you think needs to happen in the coming weeks to see some kind of settlement?
I think, I agree with Anton that Kyiv has to sort of make some kind of constructive steps in accepting some forms of autonomy and begin to view Eastern Ukraine as part of Ukraine, which just wants to be a little different, but to work with them on their conditions. Because just very recently, the Speaker of Ukrainian Parliament, Parubi, which obviously airing the views of the government, he said basically, people in Donbass, people in Eastern Europe shouldn't tell us what to do. because they were moved in these territories only in 1940s under Stalin, so they are not real Ukrainians. So that's a kind of paradox. They don't consider them real Ukrainians. They want to bomb them. They kill them. So it's, this is very interesting. When the ambassador says one of our soldiers was killed, but 10,000 civilians in Donbass were killed. They are killed there very frequently. They don't view them as real Ukrainians. Yet they want to have the territory for some reason. Don't want to give them autonomy. So until there is a recognition that people in Eastern Europe wants to live under their conditions, I don't think they want bombing to stop. They want to function like everybody else function, and Ukraine, Kyiv regime has to acknowledge it.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks to both of you for joining us.